Attack on Cloudbase was one of the last episodes to be made in the series and was filmed at the end of October 1967. Many writers refused to write stories that end with an explanation that it was only a dream. I've always found that difficult to understand. I've personally written a number of stories which were really someone's dreams, and they've always been, in my opinion, very successful. I must say I've had a few dreams in my time that I would have liked to have filmed, although I don't think we could have broadcast the result.
Leading the fight, one man fate has made indestructible. His name, Captain Scarlet.
Attack on Cloudbase set out to be a comedy, but I guess the way it turned out, it became a black comedy. I was reminded recently that Symphony Angel had longer hair in the early episodes, but it was felt that she looked too much like Destiny and also Rhapsody, and so her hair was cropped to make her more recognizable. So that's the answer to that question. Now you can ask it.
Explosion to rear of cockpit. Cause unknown.
What is your position, Symphony?
I've always liked the Angels' flying gear. I always felt the girls looked terrific. I think that even I would look good wearing that sort of stuff. Barry Gray scored music for the first 12 episodes in the series. That exhausted our music budget. And so from then on, Barry had to use his music, which was now in a library, and rejig it to fit the subsequent episodes. The exception to this was Attack on Cloudbase. This picture was so different, and as I said earlier, it turned out to be a black comedy, that he really had no music that was suitable, and he had to score this one. And I remember I was very pleased with that, although I had to find the extra money to pay for it. In the opening sequence, there were a number of great special effects shots. The parachute landing, I think, was very, very believable. And you mustn't forget that all our special effects were made before computer-generated images were possible. I remember one evening when we were preparing for Captain Scarlet, I saw a television commercial where a logo crossed the body of a very shapely girl. The interesting thing was it followed her contours perfectly. Later, when we decided to use the Mysteron rings, Reg Hill came up with the idea of making a transparency of a painting of the rings, in other words, white rings on a black ground, and then projecting the 35mm transparency onto the set through a slide projector and panning the slide projector across the scenes. This worked perfectly. I also remember at the time of Scarlet being made, hearing about politicians. They were going to have, say, a very important meeting, and they would take days arguing who should sit next to the Prime Minister or the President. And this absorbed a lot of time and caused a lot of friction. And so I came up with the idea of Colonel White having a round table, and a round table where he could sit in the center and revolve his chair so that, in theory, whoever he was talking to, he could face them, and there would be no preferential treatment.
Any plane coming within a 100-mile radius will be warned off.
Certain things in the series I enjoyed watching. I was always pleased when people in the studio did something to make the show look more realistic and more believable. There are certain shots where you'll see Captain Scarlet has a 5 o'clock shadow. To me, it makes him look very real. And it was those little touches that helped to make the show successful. If you watch the Spectrum jet approaching Symphony, you'll notice that both Symphony and the jet are in the same shot. It's one of the very few times that we combined a puppet and a special effects shot in the same scene. It was very difficult to do, but very effective. And of course, what we had to do was to take the puppet along to the special effects department, build a little rig so that the puppeteer could stand overhead, and then make the puppet act whilst the model maker flew the jet towards her.
Destiny has completed her search pattern. Shall I send her around again?
No, Lieutenant.
Destiny's action was a bit too thick for my liking. I prefer the accent of French girls who speak near perfect English. Somehow it's softer and more attractive. But that's just my view, and maybe other people think differently.
SIG.
It's also established in the stories that Captain Blue had a soft spot for Symphony. I like those touches. It made Captain Blue and the people around them somehow more real.
Snap out of it. We should get down to the radar room.
Tony Barwick wrote this episode.
Destiny will find her, won't she?
He wrote many of the episodes, not only for Captain Scarlet, but all my other shows. He was the one person who understood my production techniques and was able to write scripts that we could film. I used to get scripts in from other writers who used to write the most impossible situations for puppets. I remember getting one script in, and I opened the first page, and it said, 100 horsemen are galloping across the moon in low gravity. And I remember just chucking in a waste bin. I mean, there was no way we could film those sort of things. Tony also had a terrific sense of humour. The treatment of Captain Magenta in this episode is a wonderful example of Barwickism. Sadly, Tony is no longer with us.
Captain Blue bursting in here and making demands.
I'm sorry, Colonel, but I have the right to ask.
Captain Blue's verbal attack on Colonel White is another good example of Tony Barwick's humanisation of these puppets. The sequence also demonstrates the ability of Ken Turner, who directed this episode. Ken was a guy I always selected to direct the more bizarre stories. He always enjoyed doing them, and he always turned out a first-class job.
Patrols left half an hour ago.
Colonel White, I'd like permission to join the search parties.
Out of the question.
I'm going, Colonel.
I'm giving you a direct order, Captain Blue. You'll stay on this.
This episode is a good example of how important the voice artists were.
I am. Yes.
The expressionless puppets were so often brought to life by good performances. Not only did the performances have to be good, but they had to be slightly over the top to compensate for the lack of expression from the puppets. Ed Bishop was always great and made Captain Blue very believable. Of course, Francis Matthews, with his wonderful Cary Grant-type voice, created a great hero. And last but not least, Donald Gray, with his wonderful rich voice, always gave great performances. Donald lost one of his arms to a German anti-tank shell in the last war. But you know, the interesting thing was he was never sorry for himself. He used to joke about it, and he was just a very, very nice, talented man.
Hungry?
No, I couldn't eat a thing. But you go ahead.
I think I will. It's going to be a long night.
Another accolade must go to John Peverell. John made the soundtracks for most of my series, and his blend of sound effects and his choice of sounds brought the pictures to life. If you want to know how important sound is, turn it off for a few moments. but not while I'm speaking. You might miss something good. When we went to the dubbing theatre to mix together all the sounds that John had laid, I loved what he did in terms of his work, but it used to drive me mad because every sound effect came from a sound library, and it would have a code number like SFX 21 or effect BA24/3. And so when we finished a run and we wanted to talk to the mixer about how we felt he should mix it, I would be thinking in terms of, we want the car up and past a little louder. The background hum needs to come down a bit because it's interfering with the dialogue. John Peveril used to say, can we have a little less of SFX 24 and bring up effects AB21 a little more? And I used to say to John, for God's sake, will you call these effects by then, refer to them as what they are, because otherwise I don't know what you're talking about. But having said that, he was a great guy and he made a great contribution to all our shows.
I'm on interceptor course. Should have visual contact any second.
Be careful.
The Angel interceptors were designed by Derek Meddings, and of course Derek made them fly. Like so many of the special effects sequences, the final result depended on the director working closely with the special effects director and Bob Bell, the art director. Fortunately, all the people at Century 2-1 when we made these shows, and particularly with Captain Scarlet, all got on well. Everybody was hell-bent on making the best possible show. There was no clock watching. We didn't start at a given time and end at a given time. We started as early as we could, and we finished when we were nearly close to dropping. And I think that that determination to make the best possible show is reflected on the screen. One of the advantages of a dream story is that the director can shock the audience by killing off one or more of the key characters without destroying the series. One has the comfort in a dream sequence of being able to bring them all back for the next show or the next season.
Rhapsody Angel.
Today, as most people know, we have an aircraft called a Harrier, and this aircraft takes off vertically. Well, the same principle was applied to Cloudbase. The idea was that it had massive downward thrusters, and this would keep it airborne. And then, of course, if the thrusters vectored left or right, it would then cause Cloudbase to move, albeit very slowly, but it could in fact travel from one place to another. I've referred to Cloudbase as an aircraft carrier in the sky. There is, of course, one major difference. On an aircraft carrier, you can stand on the deck and breathe normally. On Cloudbase, this would be impossible because it was hovering at 40 or 50,000 feet, and you would die very, very quickly because of the thinness of the air and also the extreme temperatures. I mean, probably 40 or 60 degrees below zero. And so when you watch the Angels being launched, you'll notice that the Angels come up enclosed in a plastic tube, which is sealed. As soon as the tube connects with the aircraft, then the bottom of the aircraft closes, and they are then in a controlled environment and able to breathe. Another thing about Cloudbase, of course, was that it had to have everything to sustain life over long periods. Obviously, it had the control rooms, Colonel White's office, the amber rooms where the Angels were able to wait in comfort until they were on call. its own medical centre.
Why don't they attack?
And of course, Lieutenant Green had his very, what at the time was futuristic computer.
I'm sorry, Colonel. It's just that
I remember we had a long discussion about what should the computers on Cloud Base look like. And we came up with the idea of having a sheet of glass on which would be printed all kinds of printed circuitry and a chair that would enable Lieutenant Green to slide up and down. And somehow, although it was never explained, he gleaned all the information necessary from what looked like in those days a supercomputer. And I think even now people looking at that computer would probably try to figure out the principle behind it. Let me put them at their ease. There was no principle behind it. It just looked good.
Wait a minute. 1, 2, 3, 4. Yes, it's 4.
During the preparation period of Captain Scarlet, which we called pre-production, a lot of the inventions took place. I remember thinking, what are we going to call these people? Well, we'd had things like Troy Tempest in Stingray and Commander Shaw, you know, Marina, everything to do with the sea. Going forward, we had Joe 90. So I was forever thinking of what names can we have that will be highly original and different. And I remember thinking, I know, we'll call the hero a colour. Now, what colour would we choose? Well, scarlet or red. Scarlet is a very vibrant colour, and I thought that would be a good name. So we started with Captain Scarlet. And it wasn't long before we were thinking, well, why not have Captain Blue? And hey, we can have all these characters would be different colours. The boss man, Colonel White, would be just like in a spectrum where you mix all the colours together, it produces white, so he would be Colonel White. And now we just mentioned spectrum, didn't we? So we can call the organisation, which has all these people with these different colour coding, spectrum. And that really is how it all came about. Now, when it came to making the uniforms, there was always a problem to make uniforms or clothes for puppets because, first of all, we had to find very, very fine materials that would hang properly. If we used normal materials, then, of course, because we were making little tiny jackets, they would be as stiff as a board. So we had to find the right kind of material. The uniforms that the Spectrum personnel wore, as you know, had zips. And so we had to hunt around for the smallest zips that we could find. Then, of course, came the idea of we had microphones that dropped down in order for them to be able to talk to base wherever they were. But how would they know when base was calling them? I mean, they may be in a situation where if the call made a sound, rather like a mobile phone does today, it could put them in jeopardy. So they had the option of having shoulder flashes which could either illuminate or illuminate together with a sound which would say that a call was coming through.
Thank you, Lieutenant.
Colonel White! Colonel White!
Oh, no.
I'm still trying to count them all, Colonel.
At the time that Scarlet was made, there were many reports from all over the world of UFOs. Whether people imagined seeing them or whether they were real, I mean, none of us know. But certainly one thing was common, and that was that most of these people who claimed they had seen a UFO reported seeing flying saucers. And so it seemed to me that we should take this notion of the alien craft from outer space being saucer-shaped and spinning. like many of the things that Derek Meddings did, it was not an easy task, because if the saucers were to spin, they had to be supported from the centre. And if they were supported by wires from the centre, they could very easily turn turtle, turn to the left or turn to the right. But he rigged them very, very carefully. And in order to show they were spinning, he put little tiny vanes on the top which caught the light and made it very clear that they were spinning. The little models he made were quite difficult to make, and so he couldn't make too many. In any case, every saucer had to have an operator working them. And so on the attack on Cloud Base, when there were eventually too many saucers for Captain Magenta to count, he used the model flying saucers in the foreground, and in the background we simply had P-bulbs which were hanging on black wires, and they looked like flying saucers in the distance. And so we were able to do the attack on Cloud Base and make it look like a fairly big attack by using really very, very little in the way of models. Another thing about this sequence is that if you look at another series of mine called UFO, which was made much later, the flying saucers are different, but it's quite obvious to me that the experience we gained on Captain Scarlet, making and flying these flying saucers, helped us to produce a very good result on UFO.
I intend to go down with my command. Out.
I've already said that Cloud Base was rather like an aircraft carrier in the sky, and of course Colonel White was its captain. And so when we were scripting, I remember saying, let's make sure that he goes down like the captain of a big ship. And so we've got this lovely shot of him standing there saluting as Cloud Base sinks into the abyss.
It was a nightmare. A terrible, horrible nightmare.
This episode really could be quite distressing to children, and I was aware of that. And so it was very important to me that once having established that it was only a dream, that we should have a sequence where everybody was happy together, and clearly nobody had come to any grief, and so was born the inevitable happy ending.
No, it was horrible. You were all killed.
My name's Gerry Anderson, and I'll leave you now with the Spectrum Pop group singing the end titles.
Captain Scarlet, he's the one who knows the Mysteron game and things they plan. Captain Scarlet, to his Martian foes, a dangerous name, a Superman. They crash him, and his body may burn. They smash him, but they know he'll return to live again. Captain Scarlet, as the angels are flying, wing to wing, into the sea. Spectrum is green.